Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session, Protecting Our Planet Through Technology. My name is Justin Edwards. I'm the Director of Learning Experiences at Minecraft. I work for one of the world's most popular computer games, and I'm delighted that I'm joined by an amazing panel of people who've got STEM careers to share with you and tell you their stories of their journey as well. I'm joined by Emily Anderson, who's a graduate in data science and works in the data science field. I'm joined by Daniel Cluley, or Dan Cluley, who's a software engineering expert and builds computer programs that deal with environmental and geographic information systems. And I'm also joined by Feroza Mahmood, who works for the WWF and does amazing stuff around ecology and evolution and conservation. And they'll talk a little bit in a moment about their careers and pathways. My own pathway is actually a little bit of a kind of windy road. I ended up in my current role by actually starting out studying computer science at university. I then ended up as a teacher and a lecturer before I went off into education, and I got deeply involved in education and actually working with young people all around the world, and particularly in the UK. And I kind of worked my way up to being the head of one of the heads of A-levels and GCSEs in the UK. I was head of examination system. But I was also a game player. And I used to play Minecraft, and I used to actually find my freedom, if you like, through this amazing game that we have that's almost 15 years old. And I joined Minecraft about 3 years ago. And in doing that, I really wanted to use the power of computer games to connect with young people around subjects like sustainability and climate change. So I've been deeply involved in making experiences like the Frozen Planet series connection. We've also done stuff with the Meteorological Office and the Crown Estate in the UK, building out understanding about energy, how we actually protect our planet, and how we protect ecosystems and animals around the world. And these games have been hugely popular. If I've got any Minecraft players on this call, I'm sure maybe you've seen some of the work in the marketplace. If not, check it out, because one of the things we do is we give all this kind of work for free in the marketplace so people around the world can play it and enjoy it and understand how we can actually better save and protect our planet through science. So that's my technological role. I'm going to hand over to my panel, who are going to tell you a little bit about their careers and their roles. I'm going to start with Emily. So Emily, I know you've just got this kind of fascinating career where you've been through different pathways. Do you want to introduce yourself and just tell everybody how you ended up where you are?
Yeah, sure. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so hopefully that's okay. But yeah, my name is Emily and I'm a graduate environmental data scientist and I work at Rouse Space. So I'm going to talk a bit about what I do and the technology that we use. So just to start off with how I got here, I did my A-levels in psychology, geography and design and technology, which is a bit of a random mix, but it's just kind of what I enjoyed at school at the time. And then I went on to study a degree in psychology. At the end of my degree, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do, but from my psychology degree, I really enjoyed working with data. So that led me on to doing a Master's of Data Science. And what really drew me to this degree in particular was being able to choose a specialism, and I chose an environmental specialism, mainly because I had a really big interest in nature and the environment, and this really allowed me to work with environmental data. So then after that degree, I went on and got the job that I'm in at the moment, which is on the graduate scheme at Rouse Space. So I've included some pictures of Rouse Space here, and in case you don't really know what it is, Rouse Space is one of the UK's national laboratories, and they do lots of things to do with like satellite testing and instrument development. And there is a virtual tour you can look at online if you want to see more of the kind of instruments and stuff we use here. But I've also included some pictures of the technology that we use, and that is Jasmine. So Jasmine is a globally unique environmental science supercomputer. And you can see in some of the images I've included here, they are the machine rooms, and they hold a lot of storage. So Jasmine has over 45 petabytes worth of storage, which is a bit tricky to think about, but 45 petabytes is basically 8 million DVDs worth of storage, or you'd be able to store all the music on Spotify 18 times over, which is about 1.5 billion songs, which is a lot of songs. So basically, the technology and infrastructure of Jasmine helps lots of different environmental scientists to carry out their research. So on a normal computer, copying over 100 terabytes of data would take several months, whereas on Jasmine, we allow scientists to do this really easily and quickly. So that's the main thing about Jasmine and the technology that we use. And then a little bit about what I do. So I work in the Centre for Environmental Data Analysis, and Centre for Environmental Data Analysis basically provides facilities for data analysis using Jasmine, but also data archival. And I don't think a lot of people really think about what happens to the data after experiments are done, or climate model simulations are run, or satellites get all this data. Where does it go? And that's basically why we exist. We archive atmospheric and Earth observation related data. And at the moment we have over 20 petabytes worth, and we do all this using Jasmine. And a really important reason why we actually want to archive all this data is to keep all this data for other scientists to use in the future, and to build off this research for more interesting research to happen. So I've included some of the projects that we help with at the moment. So this includes Met Office weather data, we have Sentinel satellite data, we help with net zero initiatives, IPCC, which is a big climate change report. And one of the projects I help with at the moment is the European Space Agency Climate Change Initiative, which is basically, there's lots of different essential climate variables such as snow, ice, ocean colour, and these all have particular science groups. And when these science groups do their research, when they're all finished, they send the data off to us, and we make sure it's all high quality, and then we put it in our archive so that people can use it in the future for more interesting climate-related research. I also just wanted to include about another part of my job, which is going to like conferences and doing public engagement events, which is a really interesting way to engage with other people about all the interesting things we do here at CEDA and the technology we use. Yeah, so that's everything from me. Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating to think, around us, there's all these huge data centers and these massive supercomputers that are processing huge amounts of information about our planet and our environment. And at the core, there's these people just helping bring it all together and know how to use and access those data sets. Thanks very much. I'm going to come back later on questions. We'll explore that a bit more. How you go from kind of psychology through to data analysis. That's a super journey. Next, I've got Dan, and Dan is at the Plymouth Marine Laboratory, which does some really fascinating work around geographical and information systems, and takes that into the real world on big ships and out in oceans. Dan, tell us how you got to your role.
Cool. So I'll just share some slides about how I got to where I am at the moment. So kind of growing up, I really liked maths and physics and technology and those kind of TV shows where people use loads of technology. I was really into those. So I ended up taking that, and I did a degree in physics at Aberystwyth University, which was great. I got to do some stuff with computers. I got to learn loads of bits of physics. I got to learn about the electromagnetic spectrum, which is very relevant for later in my career. But I was getting to the end of my course, and like many people, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to go to like really advanced theoretical physics. I kind of wanted to do something with the environment. So I did some work experience towards the end of my degree with the Forestry Commission. And that's when I started hearing about geographical information systems. And that combined loads of things. It had data, it had computer programming, it was doing stuff with the environment. So I thought, actually, that sounds really cool. So I ended up staying at Aberystwyth and doing a master's in that. And through that master's, I ended up staying at Aberystwyth University and doing a PhD there. So I did my PhD using airborne and satellite data to look at the structure of forests. And I got out to go out and do some field work. We took 3D scans of forests. And then I did a lot of computer programming, a lot of modeling, a lot of working with the data. And that was really good. I learned loads of things there. I kind of, through that master's and the PhD, I really got an interest in satellite data and how we use computers to take that into useful information, and how we can actually do some useful things for our environment was part of that. So after I finished my PhD at Aberystwyth University, I ended up getting what's called a postdoc, which is kind of a job you get after a PhD to progress up the career ladder. And I ended up moving over to the US to do that. So I moved to the University of Southern California out in Los Angeles. And I was also doing stuff with trees and satellites there. I spent a lot of time installing soil moisture sensors. So a lot of my postdoc, I spent digging holes and putting sensors in and working out all the computers to do that. I also did some stuff where we were mapping wetlands in Alaska. And I found the science interesting, but what I found really interesting was the technology and the computer programming side, and how I can work with other scientists to actually help them do their research. So while I was out there, I also kind of started writing a blog and looking at bits of technology. And I found out that computer programming, that teaching people how to do that stuff, that felt like that was a really good job for me, and where I kind of really enjoyed that. So after I finished in the US, I got a job in Plymouth at Plymouth Marine Laboratory. And initially I started at Plymouth Marine Laboratory working on processing airborne data. So in the UK, they fly airborne data for science. And then at Plymouth Marine Laboratory, when that data comes back, we make it into something that scientists can use, and then they go on to do their research with that. So that's where I started out at Plymouth Marine Laboratory, and very much continuing that theme of working with scientists and supporting scientists. And kind of while I was there, the role of a research software engineer started to be recognized more in science. Previously, it wasn't really a role that existed, at least not when I was doing my degree and even my PhD. And that's a role that it really fits in with what I like doing. It's working with scientists. It's been involved in research, but actually more on the computer programming side, more on the working with people. That's pretty much what my job is at the moment. So I work with scientists. I help them use satellite data to answer their questions. We do a lot of computer programming with big data. We use AI. I've done some work with scientists detecting plastics, which I discussed in an earlier session. And going forwards, this is a lot of what we do at PML. So I now have some people that I work with. I have a small team, and together we work with scientists to help them get the most out of their data so that they can solve some of the environmental problems that we're currently facing.
Wow, that's such a journey, Dan. And I think one of the things we're starting to see here is that when we're working with computers or we're working with large data, it's not just behind the screen. It's taking it out into the real world and connecting it with the environment and connecting it around us. It's not just a desk job. What we do with computers can have an impact out there, and we get to explore that. And when we get to the Q&A, I'd love to chat a little bit more about that on all the panelists' experience of that. Next, my third guest is Feroza. Feroza is at the WWF, the World Wildlife Fund in the UK, and is working on a wild owls project. So Feroza, tell us how did you get to where you are?
Let me just share my screen. There we go. So hi everyone, my name is Feroza. Thank you for having me. As Richard said, I'm the Wild Owls Officer at WWF. But before I chat about my role, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how I got here. I've always sort of loved nature and our natural environment. I grew up in southwest London, so nature wasn't exactly the first thing that you think of when you think about the city, and it wasn't completely accessible to me. But I was lucky that I grew up next to a common, so I found a lot of peace and joy in the nature that I could access. But as the more I learned about it, the more eco-anxiety kind of settled in. I learned about the problem of climate change and the biodiversity crisis we face. So when I came to study at university, I picked biology on a bit of a whim because I knew I liked science and I knew I kind of cared about the environment, but I wasn't actually sure that I could actually even have a career in it. But when I started studying my undergraduate, I loved it. I fell in love with learning about systems and our natural ecosystem systems, how they work, the mechanisms between the animal and plant life on our planet. And also I learned about the way the climate is changing and what that is going to cause for the effect on humans as well. And so then I went on to do my master's, and I specialized even further in ecology, evolution, and conservation at Imperial. And again, like it's just been what I loved. So I really, really enjoyed my time at university because I happened to fall into studying what I was super interested in. But then during my time at university, I actually studied bumblebees, and I looked at the effects that pesticides, which are chemicals that we spray on crop plants, and the effect they have on on bumblebee populations, their reproductive abilities, their lifespan, and their population sizes. And bumblebees are obviously really, really important pollinator species. And that is sort of where I found my thing. Like, I realized I love bees, and we could probably sit here and talk about bees for an hour, but I won't force anyone to listen to that. But it just showed me how important our natural systems are and how harmful the effects of humans are, and the fact that there are steps we need to do in order to mitigate these changes. But then I graduated towards the end of last year, and at the start of this year, in January, I started working for WWF, and I'm actually a campaigner. And you might heard of WWF. A lot of you at home might actually have adopted an animal through us, and you might have a cuddly toy, which is always really lovely. But another aspect of our work that people don't realize is we do a lot of campaigning work. And you might have seen on the BBC, there was a new documentary called Wild Owls, and that was narrated by Sir David Attenborough. And if you haven't watched it, I'd really encourage you to do so. It's an incredible documentary about the breadth and the beauty of natural life here at home in the UK. And off the back of that, we collaborated with the RSPB and the National Trust, and we launched a campaign which we hoped that people that had watched the documentary would then be inspired to take action to restore and protect UK nature. And we're also looking at influencing the private sector and businesses and politicians to also help support us. This slide kind of shows that the campaign is absolutely massive. It's a massive ask to protect and restore nature, not just globally, but in the UK as well. And we kind of look at it as a multi-layered approach, because we need everyone to make changes and differences to help us see the progress we need. I thought I'd pull some examples of what I've sort of worked on. So one of the things we work on is championing our community groups, because there's an incredible amount of community groups up and down the UK. And if you've not heard of your local one, I'd definitely give it a Google and see what's around you. And we look to champion these groups and use our sort of global platform to amplify their voices. And one of the things I work on is called the People's Plan for Nature. And that was an independent citizen assembly approach, where we essentially use a demographic representation of the UK public. And we asked and we taught them about nature and completely independently. And we asked them to come up with calls to action targeting individuals, communities, politicians, businesses, and local and national governments. And it's a really powerful tool because it's the voice of the people. It's what the people want by the people. So it's quite strong in helping us say rationale for why we want to see changes. Another thing we do is just empowering individuals at home to be able to make steps, and that could be really simple as just planting some wildflowers in your garden and helping your pollinator species. And I was able to project manage a live stream called the Wild Weekender, and we just had Q&As and demos and chats about tangible actions you can do at home. And then another stream, is very complicated, I know, is targeting politicians, because we need legislative change in order to protect our nature in the UK. And one of the things I did was I helped coordinate an event we held at Westminster for MPs, where we tried to reach them and ask them to consider our points in their manifestos. But obviously that's quite, so no 2 days are the same for me. I do a lot of different things all the time, and it's really, really exciting and it's fun. And it's sort of the transferable STEM skills I've been able to pick up through academia and through research that I was able to shift from quite a core sciencey kind of future into a little bit more campaigning and technology kind of side. One of the biggest skills I use is communication. It's easy to have a really big knowledge base individually about science and what's happening in the climate crisis. It's a completely different thing to be able to present and talk to the general public about that. And what we find really important is it's quite important not just to say it's all doom and gloom, we're absolutely nothing's going to change. We want to project that there is a hope for the future. So I always say communication is one of the biggest skills I use every single day. And also other skills like problem solving, I'm able to be a lot more creative in this role. So I really, really enjoy that. I find it kind of strange being asked to like give loads of career advice in this, like, because I'm so early in my career, but a lot of people always ask me about how to get the foot in the door, because the environmental sector has like quite a big diversity problem. It's quite well known, but as I said before, the nature crisis, it needs everyone in order to make the changes we need. So if you are from an under disadvantaged background, I'd always say like bring your skill set to the front. Everyone is needed, and yeah, and it all sort of falls into place. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's great to hear scientists with passions, the passion about the bees or the passion about protecting our wildlife. And I'll come back to you and explore that. And maybe as a panel, actually, you can explore the kind of opportunity for the importance of diversity actually with inside working teams as well. And we'll explore that. Well, look, I hope everybody listening into this call really starts to feel the passion that scientists have about their roles and their jobs, and also how that then drives them to develop their knowledge and skills. And I'd like to start maybe with you, Emily. You had this great career where you were doing psychology and then you got into data analytics. And I suppose we're kind of all the sum of our parts, or we're the sum of those experiences. How does psychology and that kind of data science combine together in your role, and how has that actually helped you in your career?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think my journey, I guess, has always just been what I found interesting. And I found psychology interesting, and then I found data interesting, and I've been able to combine them. I think a lot about psychology is a lot about people, and like Fraser said about communicating with people, it's such an important skill, no matter like what your job is. So yeah, it's really interesting. I think there's lots of different parts of a job, like project management. That's a lot about psychology, and yeah, there's just so many parts to it.
Do you think that there is an art in data science as well as the science? Do you think there's an artistic part, or maybe a kind of skill around creativity that sometimes comes into that role?
So there's always, you have to think about what's the best way you can manage the data, and we do a lot in my team about how you can express the data in different ways. You can get people to engage with it in different ways. So there's a lot about how you can show data that's not just numbers on a page or something.
Yeah. And sometimes when we present data in different ways, we see different things, and we can affect how people understand that. So there is that display, that communication, the teamwork then, in obviously building that is kind of a key skill. Yeah, that is amazing. That's amazing. I'd love to explore then the kind of decision points as we get through our career. And Dan, if I can turn to you, you had this kind of amazing journey where computers and programming became part of your life. But where was it in that kind of progression that you had at university and the learning that you just thought, yeah, I need to connect this to the environment, to environmental science, and start using the technology for good? Was there a point in it, or was it always kind of stepwise as you were progressing through that amazing university education?
I think it was stepwise, and also kind of things changed. So like I was really interested in like particle physics and string theory and that really theoretical side. And I still am, but I kind of think, do you want to do that for like as a day job? Do you want to do that every day? Or are there other things you might want to do? And yeah, I kind of started exploring different things. And once I'd kind of seen some options where actually I can use a lot of the things I like and do something for the environment, that kind of that's kind of a bit of a thread. I just kept pulling at that, and then the more I've gone into it, the more I've actually found I'm still doing the things I really like to do, but I'm helping the environment. And yeah, the more projects I've done, the more people I've worked with, and we do some really cool things that I can see there's a benefit for the environment. I think that's a really nice to have that rewarding aspect of your job, knowing that you're doing something that's fun, that you enjoy, but actually there's a wider benefit there. I think given the current situation we're in, that's really important.
Yeah, that's amazing. And if kind of reflecting on that kind of career development, is there any advice you'd give to young people about having to find that passion, or how they go about kind of sustaining that to drive them forward? You have a great passion for this subject now, and it obviously is more than a career. It's something else. It's giving something back. Was there any advice you'd give to young people about how they discover themselves in that way?
Try different things, kind of recognize that not everything's going to work out for you. Like some things that lots of people love, you might do and think, actually, that's not for me. I'm not really enjoying that. And it might even be that there's things that you're easily good at that you don't have a passion for. So I think just try lots of different things. Some things that you might be really into, you might not be that good at to start with. So it's knowing you need to put the work in. And yeah, so I found doing work experience really useful as part of my degree, especially in a completely different area. So yeah, I think looking for opportunities, and yeah, I think keeping that enthusiasm is important, because that people like enthusiasm. People will give you opportunities to try different things if you have that enthusiasm.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great point about work experience. When we experience it in the practical reality, when we take it from the classroom and go out there and experience the workplace, it can tell us, yeah, this is great, or no, I need to change tack and try something else. But as you say, keep trying
Yeah.
and keep pushing through those boundaries, keep working hard on it. That's awesome. Feroza, if I can come to you, I think at the end of your presentation, you made a really, really important point around diversity, and that, you know, there is opportunities really to increase the connection of all our society and bring not just equality and inclusion, but the benefits of actually bringing different people with different experiences and different backgrounds. Can you talk a little bit about your experience actually progressing through that, and the value you think that brings to the community you now work in?
Yeah, like I said, I think when we look at the climate crisis, it's not going to just be one group of people that can solve the whole thing and we'll be fine. It needs a global effort, and I think that's why having a diverse group of people working on it is so important. And at the start, when I realized I really wanted to work in the sector, it was really daunting, because I didn't know anyone who worked for the environment. I didn't know anyone at my local nature reserve. But I would just encourage anyone, if you love nature, you will be drawn to it anyway, I think. And you might find, like me, you're the only person under 60 at your local reserve's next bird walk, but you might actually that's what you like doing on your Saturday mornings. So it's just about finding opportunities where you can connect with nature. And it can be quite challenging if you are from a disadvantaged background, if you didn't grow up in the best area, or you're an ethnic minority. But I'm actually on a placement with Groundwork at the minute, which is called New to Nature, and that is all about, there's about 100 roles across the UK in the sector for disadvantaged groups. So I definitely think there's a shift towards helping us break those barriers and get into the sector. And I just look for any opportunity to, as Dan said, get that experience on your CV, because that will just sort of help you break in a bit.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm sorry, but I have to ask you about bees. You were so passionate about the bees. What was it when you came across that subject? Because I know that there are a lot of young people listening to this call, and maybe they found a subject themselves and they're developing a passion. But was there a moment you just went, "This is amazing. This is what I need to be looking at"?
I don't know. It's when in third year, you pick a research project, and they gave us like this massive long list, and I was going, oh, bees, and then I searched up a little bit, and then you learn about they're small but mighty, and how important pollination is to basically every food system in the planet. We wouldn't have any food without a pollinating species, and I think there's just something that drew me to them, and I just found them really fascinating. Like, the tiny little bit. For instance, I had to conduct all my research under red light because they can't see under it, so it calms them down because they can't see you coming at them with forceps. But yeah, I do really love bees and pollinators, and it's a bit nerdy, but I think, as I said, like you find what you're interested in, and you can just take that passion as far as you can, and that makes working every day more and more enjoyable.
Yeah, it becomes like Dan and Emily. It becomes like more than a job. It's a career that people we love. We love like connecting technology with a passion. It isn't just about the technology itself. It's about making a change in the world with that technology and trying to use that technology in a better way. And I suppose then generally to the panel, I'll leave it to anybody who wants to answer this one, but you know, the world is constantly moving on in technology. Our jobs don't stay still. Something happens, something changes, and we have to keep ourselves up to date. How do you go about, you know, keeping yourself up to date, picking the things that you need to keep skilled on in technology? AI for me is a really interesting space. You know, it's massively emerging and a big area. And I'm starting to think, you know, how is that going to change the world of education, or how is that going to change the world of gameplay in Minecraft? How do you go about choosing, you know, the things that you're going to stay up to date with?
I can have a go at answering this if you want. So yeah, there's loads of technology and to keep up to date with. So for my role and how I do it is I don't try and keep up to date with everything. What I do is I work with people that are up to date on those things. So I normally have kind of a high level view of bits of things, like so a general overview, and there'll be some areas that I specialize in that I keep my skills up with. But a lot of areas I don't know a lot about that area. I just know who to talk to and how to talk to them. And I think that goes back to the point of communication as well. Actually, it's impossible to know everything and keep everything up to date. So you kind of find the areas that you focus on, and then you work out who else you need to talk to and how to talk to them. So that's how I deal with it.
That's a great answer. Emily, Feroza, how do you keep up to date?
Tricky thing, because you don't know what you're going to need. I think especially in our team as well, it's AI and that kind of development that might come into our systems. I think it's just maybe also thinking what you find most interesting and where you think that could take you is always the best way to go, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Chase your passions. And I think that all of you have mentioned communication. So, you know, we sometimes think about technology that we are in front of computers and we are on our own, but actually all the projects that we work on are about working with other people, and not just in the UK, maybe globally, and working with people in different time zones and different skill sets. Besides communication, do you think that there are other skills, you know, in technology that are absolutely crucial for us? I think you mentioned some of them about, yes, teamwork, but also creativity you mentioned.
Yeah, I think especially in campaigning, you do have to get a bit creative, because it's like, how do you get people to care about, for me, nature and the environment? And it might not be typically what you, because in a sense, I already care, but it's like, well, how do I shift the way I say things to get other people to care? And a lot of it is also problem solving, and that's something I think I picked up a lot whilst doing research, and that I think applies to like every situation every day, because I think most people can say when you're working with a big team, there's like a bunch of, you might get a changing deadline or something might happen with a budget, and you always have to be adaptable. And a lot of that is what learning to work really well within a team as well, because you find you can rely and work with some incredible people as well.
Well, that is absolutely awesome. Well, look, folks, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've loved your presentations. I've always found scientists inspiring by their passion and their exploration of their subject, and the fact that, you know, as scientists, we keep developing our skills. It never stops. And Rosie, your point at the end, it's all about fixing problems. We spend our day fixing problems for wildlife, or fixing problems that we face on our planet, but that's what we do. We use technology to do that. I hope the young people listening to this have got some inspiration. I hope that you're all able to go and find your own passion, because you can hear that passion drives us to learn and passion drives us to actually do good in the world. Thank you for listening. I've been Justin Edwards. Please look up the work of these amazing people if you want to be inspired by some more. The next session is going to take you into engineering. So how do we do this through engineering? So I'm going to leave now. Thanks very much for joining us. Best wishes to all.